Last Christmas, my girlfriend got me this bucket list poster of 100 movies to watch. It's pretty cool, got some good stuff on here, but the problem is, I've seen like 90% of the movies because I watch way too many movies.
Not to worry.
She came out with a genius solution. I am to rewatch all the movies before I can check them off the list. So let's do a little quick maths. That means I have to watch 8.3 movies a month, or just under 2 a week.
Now that's f***ing dope, huh?
I love it.
I quite like The Dare Hunter, Michael Cimo's 1978 film. It is about the relationship between Robert De Niro and Christopher Walken's characters as they fight in the Vietnam War and struggle with life afterwards. This movie is a great depiction of Vietnam and shows how the experience of war can affect people and their relationships. It isn't the most original concept though. The film industry being saturated with films about the Vietnam War, like Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, and even Forrest Gump. The main draw is De Niro and Walken's characters and their relationship. De Niro gave his usual great performance, but Walken kinda blew me away with his performance. I haven't really seen him give that many great performances, this probably being one of his best. His emotions were so reserved and his subtle acting really conveyed the pain that the war gave him, almost as good as his exceptional role in 9 Lives.
My name is Perkins, so I call my store Perkins.
This movie was quite long, it did drag a lot, and there is also a lot of uninteresting characters in this film, including Meryl Streep's character, who I didn't really enjoy that much. This movie won Best Picture at the Oscars, and a bunch of other awards, so it can't be that bad. Only the best films win Best Picture, right? I gave this movie 3.5 stars, and I did quite like it, but I doubt I'll ever watch it again. It's not too original or too groundbreaking, and it's really long.
I love it.
Everyone knows this movie, it's a classic, and for good reason. Ghostbusters is one of the funniest movies ever made. It has a great cast of Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis, who play a team of scientists who battle ghosts. This movie is not only extremely funny, but is just so visually enjoyable, with a great mix of practical and special effects. The special effects are a bit dated now, but they're used quite sparingly so they can be forgiven. Except this ghost dog. It looks like shit. Aykroyd and Ramis wrote the script for this film, and hearing Aykroyd talk about it, it really seemed like this movie was a big passion project for the both of them. Aykroyd is a huge believer in the supernatural, to the extent that it's kinda ridiculous what he actually believes in. I would recommend watching the Joe Rogan podcast with him on it. Very interesting, and gives some cool insight in the making of this movie.
You know, my family was into paranormal research. That's why I wrote the Ghostbusters. My dad was a researcher, and his father.
That's why you wrote Ghostbusters?
Yeah, because we have an old farm in Canada. And my grandfather was a dentist in Kingston, Ontario in the 20s, and a man walked up to him. He'd been researching.
He spends most of the time trying to hawk his crappy vodka, but interesting nonetheless. I've given this movie 4.5 stars. The sequel and the reboot are both kinda crap. I would steer clear of those.
I love it.
4 Weddings and a Funeral was very fun. The premise is kinda generic. Oh, I'm always at a wedding, but I'm never the groom.
Always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
This truly is the most pressing issue of our time, and I'm so glad this movie has the guts to talk about it. This movie is better than other movies with a similar concept, as the characters are quite likable and fun. Hugh Grant and Annie McDougal's characters have real chemistry, and the audience can really care for them. Other than the characters, there's nothing that intriguing about this film. The whole time I was wondering why this movie was even on this bucket list. Like, did someone actually think this is one of the 100 best movies? Well, I was thinking that, and also which character was gonna die, so there could be a funeral. Not a spoiler, it's literally in the title. I've given this movie 3 stars. It's fun, and I wouldn't say go watch it, but, you know, I wouldn't say don't watch it. Just like, do one or the other, I don't know.
I love it.
I love a good sports movie, with the underdog protagonist trying to take on an opposing foe, and Rocky is the king of these movies. It is about an amateur boxer who gets the opportunity to fight the best boxer in the world, and it's about his training that leads up to the big fight. There is high stakes and drama in this movie, making the audience feel that Rocky's entire life has led up to this moment. Sylvester Stallone probably gives his best performance ever, and that's saying something. Look at his incredible filmography, he has incredible range.
Now that's sarcasm.
All the characters are so fleshed out and enjoyable, and the audience can really empathize with all their struggles. The score is pretty incredible as well, so iconic in pop culture, and I can't stop humming the theme as I edit this. So catchy. But the best part of this film is the boxing choreography. It is so brutal and feels so realistic. Other than this film and Raging Bull, I don't really see other films that portray boxing so convincingly. I've given this 4 stars. I bet I'd love this movie more if I lived in Philadelphia. They consider Rocky such an icon there. They even have a statue of him. That's crazy.
I love it.
Seventh Samurai is the darling of the film community. Everyone seems to love this film, even being 6th on the Letterboxd Top 250, and I can understand why. This 1954 Japanese film is pretty incredible. especially given the fact that it was made over 60 years ago. It is about a group of samurai who defend a small village that is being overrun by a group of bandits. The production value is pretty great, with some impressive sets, and there are so many actors and horses used in some very enjoyable choreographed fight scenes. I feel like some of the characters were lacking though. Even though this film is over 3 hours long, only a handful of characters were really fleshed out, which is very disappointing and kinda reminds me of the movie Lagaan, which is on this list and I reviewed it on my second video of the series. Maybe this movie could have been better if it focused more on the undeveloped samurai, or just had less samurai. Ultimately, I did really enjoy this film and I would recommend it. 4 stars.
I love it.
This movie is so important to modern day animation. Toy Story was the first fully 3D animated movie, paving the way for modern animation. It is about a group of sentient toys trying to get used to the addition of a new toy in their group. It's a very simple film with nothing overly complicated going on, which is expected coming from a film made for kids. And even though I can appreciate this film for its legacy and its place in film history, it is very dated. The animation looks as you would expect animation to look like from 1995. When I see modern day Pixar movies, it's hard to take this film seriously, which is the main problem with computer animation. It dates very quickly, and that's why I pledge my life to the 2D animation master race. Anyway, even with the dated animation, it was still a fun film and I did enjoy rewatching this. I have huge nostalgia for Toy Story 2, which I remember watching on a loop as a child. I had that shit on VHS. I've given this 3.5 stars and it's probably one of the best Pixar films.
I love it.
The Prestige is one of my favourite Christopher Nolan films. It is such a great movie about magicians in 20th century England. Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale give some stellar performances, showing their incredible range. David Bowie is also in this film, playing Nikola Tesla.
Call me Tesla, Nikola, impeccably dressed.
This is one of my favourite roles of his, just beating out the Goblin King from Labyrinth. I really need to watch more movies that he's in, he's great. Like many of Nolan's films, this movie is a bit of a mindfuck. It may take a couple of viewings to completely grasp everything that's going on in this film, as it is layered in many different time frames, and it isn't very forgiving. If you blink, you may not understand what the hell is going on. I'm working on a series reviewing Christopher Nolan's filmography, so I'll talk more about this movie then, but this is definitely a 5-star film. I would say Nolan's film Memento is better than this film, but this is a close second.
I love it.
Martin Scorsese is one of the best directors living today. He is always making amazing films, especially his films based on organized crime. The Departed is one of these films. It's about a cop going undercover in a crime family, while a member of the crime family has infiltrated the police, and they're trying to figure out each other's identity. This movie is pretty amazing. Young Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio are both great, but the best performance was Jack Nicholson. He played the role of Frank Costello so well, being so iconic. Nicholson is one of my favorite actors ever, being amazing in The Shining and the 1989 Batman. He always has such an aura around him, whose presence being so demanding on the screen, really captivating the audience. This movie won Scorsese his Best Director Oscar, which is a tragedy that that's his only one. And frankly, this is nowhere near Scorsese's best film, which I'd say is Goodfellas. So it's weird he got the Oscar for this film. Very strange. Anyway, this movie is so great. I'll give it 4.5 stars.
I love it.
This is one of those super famous movies that I keep meaning to watch but never get around to, so thanks to this bucket list I finally got to watch this. Good Will Hunting is very cheesy, but you know, the good type of cheesy. It is about a genius underprivileged kid who undertakes therapy to try to straighten out his life so he can have a better life. This movie was actually written by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, which I didn't know going into it. It's very clear that this was a passion project for the two of them, and it shows through the relationship between the two characters that they play, who are very fleshed out and very fun to watch. Robin Williams was also nice to see in a serious role, opposed to his usual comedies. He wasn't that amazing though, as I think he's primarily a comedian, but it was nice to see him do something new. This film is so quotable as well. I remember seeing a few references to this film in Community.
You know what the best part of my day is? For about 10 seconds, from the time I sit down in Spanish to the time I look at your desk, because I think, maybe I'll look, and he won't be there.
I've given this 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it, but it's nothing too groundbreaking. The Danny Elfman score was very enjoyable, but strangely reminiscent of the score from Night at the Museum.
I love it.
This movie is very strange. Leon the Professional is a movie about a contract killer who trains a young Natalie Portman to assassinate people. They have a very uncomfortable relationship, as Natalie Portman's character falls in love with Leon, even though she's like 11. And there's also Gary Oldman's ridiculously eccentric character, who is the villain of the film that killed Portman's parents. I would say this is Oldman's weirdest role, but he was also in the movie Tiptoes, so... Like, don't get me wrong, I did enjoy this movie, but why did 25% of people give it 5 stars on Letterboxd? I don't get it. It does have a really well choreographed climax, with some really great over-the-top stunts. Other than that, I don't really get why this movie is considered amazing. I've given this 3 stars, and I think it was okay. I might have to rewatch this movie again, because I must have missed something. 25% of people can't be wrong, right? Sorry this video is up a week late. uni and procrastination is a bitch. I have a few videos in the works at the moment with Richard, and also a second part to my Christopher Nolan Best Director video. Please let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my review, and on what movies I should watch this month from the list.
And yeah, be sure to subscribe and leave a like.